This time on Psychic Investigators. When a college student vanishes, everyone's looking.
None of her friends had any information, had no idea where Kim Antonakis was.
Then, a psychic sees a twisted plot.
I knew there were men. I knew they were waiting for her. You could feel the ropes.
And says she's in grave danger.
They say she played in a sandbox that she didn't belong in.
Can the psychic help to solve the mystery of what happened to Kim Antonakis?
I knew she was alive, and I knew they had to find her right away.
Brooklyn, New York. In 1995, the borough suffers more than its fair share of the city's long tradition of crime and violence. A place where sometimes innocent people get hurt. It's nearly 4 a.m. on March 1st. After a night out in Manhattan, 20-year-old college student Kim Antonakis drops her friend, Liz Pace, at her apartment in Canarsie. Then drives a few blocks to her own apartment. Later that day, Kim's dad gets a call. Kim is a no-show at her part-time job. It's totally out of character. Tommy Antanakis immediately calls Kim's friends. No one has seen her.
Tommy came into the precinct shortly after not being able to get in contact with his daughter. I think it was about a day. And he had come into the 69th precinct in Canarsie to make a missing persons report.
Generally, the police wait 24 hours to investigate a missing person. But this time, they move fast.
I don't know. Something just said, run with this one. I don't have a good feeling about this case.
Detective Phil Turcola is on duty that day.
I reported to the missing persons squad, and I started to open up a case and investigate this myself.
Pretty and vivacious, Kim is popular and has a wide circle of friends. An only child, her parents are divorced. Her father, a successful businessman, lives close by. Her mother, in Florida.
Kimberly was a sweet girl, but naive. She had a little fire. She was a lot of fun. She was. She had a good way about her. She had a generous heart.
Detective Turcola suggests Tommy check Kim's parking spot for her car.
And then he called me, and he says, I think you need to come here. I found something. Her car was not there, but there was an earring on the garage floor. Don't know if that earring was there, fell out of a car, if she was wearing it, but I realized one person would know if she was wearing it, and that'd be Liz Pace.
Kim's friend, Liz Pace, confirms Kim was wearing both earrings the previous night.
Now I know that the car was in that garage, Kim was out of the car, and that earring fell off. I knew she was a victim of a crime. There was no doubt in my mind.
The detective's first thought is that Kim may have been carjacked.
I immediately put an alarm out over the NYPD's internal computer system, describing her to be on the lookout. I got in contact with the Aviation Bureau, and I asked them to look at the spots where cars are normally dumped.
Oh, we were out there, nonstop. I guess the adrenaline kicks in. Sleep don't matter.
I live on Long Island. Every night that I left Canarsie, I drive through parts of East New York, which are known auto stripping parts. People steal cars, auto strip them, and dump them. Cars are recovered all the time in certain desolate parts of Brooklyn.
But Detective Turcola finds nothing. Later that day, when Kim's father arrives home, his answering machine is flashing. But there are no messages. Curiously, someone has phoned and hung up twice. The police check morgues and hospitals. Nothing. They speak to Kim's friends and neighbors and to the couple staying at Kim's place, Joshua Torres and April Dedali.
None of her friends had any information, had no idea where Kim Antonakis was.
Days pass with no sign of Kim. Her mother, Marlene, arrives from Florida. A family friend suggests that Marlene sees psychic Ellie Crystal.
A woman called me, quite hysterical actually, and she asked for a reading. She had to have it that night. It was an emergency. This was Kim's mom, Marlene, who had called me.
Host of her own local cable show, Crystal calls herself a medium. She says spirits come to her from the bridge outside her window.
I realized after I lived here for a while that it's almost like harmonics. The two end posts are like tuning forks, and the cables represent the harmonics. Spirits seem to be very drawn and attracted to the bridge, and it's just kind of became like a dimensional doorway for me.
2 days after Kim's disappearance, her mother, Marlene, arrives with one of her daughter's friends at Ellie Crystal's Brooklyn apartment.
They showed me a picture. I started seeing images. I knew she was alive, and I knew they had to find her right away.
Kim Antonakis has been missing for 3 days. Brooklyn police suspect foul play, but they have no real leads. Her mother asks a psychic for help. Ellie Crystal says her daughter is alive, but in grave danger. The psychic channels the young woman's spirit and tries to pinpoint her location.
To go into her body is to feel very cold and very chilled. Her whole energy was very weak and fading. I felt she was dehydrated, she has not eaten, and that if somebody didn't find her very soon, she would die.
Ellie Crystal says she can see what the police already suspect, that Kimberly has been abducted.
I feel that she made an attempt to escape, but they got her. You could feel that, you know, she had been taken as a prisoner. You could feel the ropes. And there was definitely this feeling of being tied up. I also felt that whoever was involved in this abduction knew her very well. I knew they were men. I knew they were waiting for her. This is kids who are getting either back at her or looking to get some money from the family. It was one or the other. Marlene was crying. She started to cry right away. The whole thing was an extremely emotional reading.
Before the session closes, the psychic has one more cryptic clue.
The letter J was a letter that came to me at the time. I saw it as children would write their letter J. It was connected to the person who had taken her. It came as a male and young and Brooklyn.
Marlene promises to pass on the paranormal clues to the police. But first, back at Kim's apartment, friends and family have gathered to listen to the psychic's tape.
I see her
Tied up. Abducted. The letter J.
struggling.
Suddenly, Kim's roommate Josh Torres and his friend Julio Negron jump to their feet. They say that they're going out to search for Kim. At 3 that morning, a fire crew responds to a fire in an empty house on 86th Avenue in Woodhaven, Queens. The flames are easily checked. But in the basement, a grim discovery. A half-charred human body. The long hair suggests it's a woman.
There was a remnants of a chair. The body was burnt beyond recognition.
Queens homicide detective Louise Pia was assigned to the case.
She had no shoes on. She was partially bound with her hands behind her back, and her feet were bound with duct tape.
Arson investigators established the fire was set intentionally with gasoline. The coroner's report reveals the woman was burned alive.
We started making calls. We had a body, and we wanted to see if people had reported anybody missing. So we called the missing persons squad. We were told that there was 2 individuals, one of which was a female in the 6-9 precinct who was reported missing a few days earlier by her father.
And that's when the phone rang. And it was Queens. And they had said they had a female deceased, victim of a homicide that fit the description of Kim Antonakis.
A description that includes some unique body art.
Kimberly Antanakis had some very distinctive tattoos on her back, on her leg.
The tattoos. An infinity sign. A scorpion. It's almost certainly Kim Antonakis.
I got Tommy sitting at my desk, and I walked out. I couldn't even look at Tom. I went into another office, and I sat there. My week came to a screeching halt. And my worst fears came true. I just couldn't bring myself to go back out and talk to Tom. But I knew I had to, so I did. And he's like, what's going on? I said, you know, Tom, I said, there's some guys that are going to come in here and talk to you in a couple of minutes. That was it. My case ended. Case closed.
So we took a ride over to the 6-9 precinct. It was very difficult to tell him that we had a body that was burned beyond recognition, and we're going to need dental records to positively confirm that the individual was his daughter.
A missing person case is now a homicide investigation. A 21-year-old New York woman missing for 3 days has been found dead, burned alive. A psychic says the letter J is connected to her killer. When the brutal crime hits the headlines, even jaded New Yorkers are outraged.
Your mind starts playing games. You get angry. You want to look for the people that did it.
They tied her up in this cold basement, totally dark, and just left her there.
Pete Donahue covers the story for the New York Daily News.
It was a very normal neighborhood. I mean, it's not a neighborhood that you would drive through and expect something like this to happen at all. Just, nice, modest, middle-class homes. And the neighbors were shocked that something like this could happen.
Weeks go by. Though the police have several suspects on their radar, they don't have enough evidence for an arrest. The psychic was right about the abduction, about Kim being tied up and close to death. Could she help the police to find the killer?
Tom Antanakis would call on a daily basis, and he would say, listen, guys, if nothing is going on and you have nothing at this point in time, would you go see a psychic? I shouldn't talk for anyone else, but my assumption was that it was all, full of baloney. But I couldn't tell Tom.
Tommy called and he said that Marlene was impressed with the information I had given her and could he come by with 2 police officers, and I said absolutely, no problem.
On the following Saturday, Tommy, his brother Joey, Detective Pia and his partner visit Ellie Crystal.
Crystal balls, I don't believe in them. Well, Tommy's motivation was to find out what happened, and whatever it took, whether it took seances or a crystal ball, he would do it to my brother.
One of the policemen, the one sitting closer to me, he asked a lot of questions. This is when Kim started coming to me.
She told us that there were 4 individuals involved in the homicide. She said that she saw the letter J as being the first letter of the names of the individuals involved. She kept seeing the letter J.
The letter J resonates with the police. Joshua Torres, who is temporarily staying with Kim with his wife and baby, is a suspect, as are his friends Jose Negron and Julio Negron, who despite their names are not related. Another friend of Torres, Nicholas Libretti, goes by the street name Little J. 4 suspects, 4 men whose names start with J, one of whom was living in Kim's apartment.
What do you look for? Justice? Vengeance? So many things go through your mind.
I mean, this was front page news. It was shocking and puzzling, and it was very difficult for people to come to grips with what happened. People were petrified. They didn't know, who was walking down their sidewalk in the middle of the night,
Despite the psychic's clues, it seems the police are no closer to closing the murder case. Weeks, then months pass. Then, on September 6, 1995, 6 months after Kim Antonakis disappeared, the police catch a major break. Friends of Joshua Torres, the guy who was temporarily staying at Kim's apartment, say he's been bragging about her murder.
And I got a call from the detective, and he basically said to me, listen, I got this girl and guy in here, and they're alleging that this guy Joshua Torres, confessing that he burned Kimberly Antanakis, abducted her for a ransom, and so on, and gave all the particulars. From that point on, the investigation started to go full force.
First, the police bring Joshua's friend Julio Negron in for questioning, and he eventually cracks.
We interviewed him at great length, and he actually confessed, and he agreed to cooperate with the district attorney's office. And then from there, we went and we grabbed Joshua and Nick Libretti simultaneously on the same day.
Torres, the roommate, denies everything. But Nick Libretti, faced with Julio Negron's confession, also cracks. Between them, they reveal a kidnapping scheme that went very, very wrong.
All they had to do was just ask. We both would have gave anything to have her back.
Involved were Joshua Torres, Nicholas Libretti, a.k.a. Little J, Julio Negron, and Jose Negron, all J's, just as the psychic predicted.
This was just animals that were fools and they were idiots.
The trial of Joshua Torres, the ringleader, opens on November 1st, 1996. He pleads innocent.
Josh Torres is a particularly twisted and grotesque personality. He's an evil individual.
Gene Reebstein prosecutes the case.
I believe Josh thought she was a good target for ransom demand because he could tell, 1, that she had a lot of resources, and 2, that her family cared for her. The way he looked at it there's money there and there's affection there. And those are 2 things Josh knows. Well, to get one, he knows how to use the other.
Torres, who already had a criminal record, easily roped his friends into a scheme. The prosecution argues that at approximately 4 a.m. on March 1st, 1995, as Kim Antonakis parked her car in the garage across from her Brooklyn apartment, Nicholas and Jose grabbed her and drove her to a vacant home in Queens. There, they tied her up in the basement with no heat, no food, and no water, and left her for 3 days. Joshua Torres phoned Kim's father twice to play a pre-recorded ransom demand. But, by accident, he played the ransom tape too early for it to be recorded. Later, when Joshua and Julio heard the recording of the psychic session, they panicked, thinking she was onto them. That same night, they drove over to Queens, planning to set Kim free. But after 3 days in the cold without food and water, she was comatose. The cruel, bungling gang assumed she was dead. Joshua decided to burn the evidence.
These guys, Torres and Libretti, had absolutely no remorse. I mean, you got the sense that they just looked at other people like bugs. They had no feeling, they had no sense of value of life.
The jury hears that just as Joshua Torres lit the fatal match, he whispered to Kim, "Life sucks." Despite the evidence, Joshua denies all the charges, but the jury thinks otherwise.
And Tommy said he didn't want the death penalty for these guys. He wanted them to suffer as long as possible.
And he should rot in jail for the rest of his life, and he should never come out.
Joshua Torres is convicted of arson, kidnapping, and first-degree murder, and sentenced to 58 years. As for Nicholas Libretti, or Little J, he's also sentenced to 58 years, but dies in prison of AIDS less than 2 years later. A year later, in November 1996, Julio Negron is sentenced to 6 years as an accessory because he did nothing to stop the crime. Jose Negron never gets to trial, as in June 1995, he was gunned down on a street in Queens. From the beginning, the psychic seemed to key in so clearly to Kim and her killers.
One of the things from Ellie's reading that I was present at that was astonishing was that she was right on the money with the letter J. I mean, you had Joshua, you had Julio, you had Jose Negron, okay? And you also had an individual that we were looking at in the investigation that was known as Little J.
I think there are psychics out there that are good at what they do. I think they do have that extra sense. It's kind of like an enhanced gut feeling.
The last time I saw Tommy, he told me that everything had been taken care of. There was a feeling with Tommy of completion, that whatever this whole scenario was that involved his daughter's kidnapping and murder and the capturing of the criminals, it had come to a conclusion already. It was over. After that, I knew I wasn't going to see Tommy again.
It was hard after. That was Daddy's little girl. 100%. She had him wrapped. Can't put it any better than that. That was his heart.
Tommy went to Kimberly's grave regularly. He went there on her birthday. He went there on holidays. He invited me to come after one of the verdicts. And he went and he said, "You know, we did it, baby. We got that piece of garbage."
In 2005, 10 years after his daughter's grisly death, Tommy dies of cancer.
I think in the end, he felt he had nothing to live for. He died of a broken heart.
This time on Psychic Investigators. In small-town Maryland, a chicken farmer vanishes.
We have searched the whole county. We couldn't find nothing. And we didn't know what was going on.
It's a mystery, even to the police.
Maybe she was not missing but had become the victim of foul play.
Until a rookie psychic takes the case.
I said, "It feels like something just hit me in the head."
And uncovers a secret no one could imagine. Amid the farmland of Maryland's eastern shore lies the close-knit community of Berlin. In 1991, a sleepy place where family ties run deep. and so do their secrets. July 29th, and 55-year-old chicken farmer Mildred Louise Williams, known to friends and family as Miss Louise, says goodbye to her elderly mother and leaves for her cleaning job in nearby Ocean City. Miss Louise tells her mother she'll be back at noon. She's never seen again. Miss Louise's brother and sister-in-law, Robert and Nettie Moxley, will never forget that day.
When she didn't come home, Granny called Dawn. Dawn said, "Oh, we'll check around. She's probably gone somewhere running around, Mom. Don't worry about it."
Dawn is Miss Louise's 32-year-old daughter who lives nearby with her son and her husband, Billy. Dawn doesn't seem too worried, but Granny Moxley is. Miss Louise is never late.
If she told you she was going to be there, she was there.
At 7:30 that night, Dawn turns up at the farm with Miss Louise's red truck. She tells her grandmother she found it in the parking lot of the supermarket. Dawn says her mother is probably out drinking, and she doesn't want her driving under the influence. By midnight, there's still no word from the missing woman. Granny Moxley convinces her granddaughter to call the police.
She said, "Dawn, if you don't call the cops, I'm calling them." And so Dawn did call the police, but she told them that this is my crazy grandmother. My mother's run off with a man, and my grandmother's just hysterical. It's okay.
The police aren't overly worried either. Miss Louise is a recent widow, fun-loving, and someone who likes to party.
She played. We all do. She loved to drink once in a while.
Everybody remembers parties with her. She was always joking around.
But Miss Louise's siblings believe something is wrong. The day she went missing, a family vacation was planned. And Miss Louise never misses a party.
I know it wasn't like my sister to take off, like that, 2 or 3 days without calling.
2 days after she vanished, the Moxley siblings, Dale, Robert, and Nettie, head to Berlin to see what they can find out about their sister. The first thing they notice is the truck that Dawn drove home from the grocery store.
And the vehicle had just been washed, they say. It was so clean. It said to me something was wrong there.
In Miss Louise's house, another clue that something is not right.
She had a safe in there with a lot of money in it. Safe was open and wasn't no money in it.
News of an empty safe is enough to get the police over to the farm, but not enough to change their mind about Miss Louise.
I was pretty much convinced at that point in time she may have been with someone and been off drinking, so forth.
Trooper Paul Frick worked the missing persons case.
So at the point that we didn't have any reason to believe anything other than the lady was missing due to her own reasons rather than foul play.
But the police do issue a missing persons report across the state. Sergeant Bill Gordy worked the case from nearby Wicomico County.
I was aware of the case. It had gotten quite a bit of notoriety, and we had had a small role in just tracking down leads of potential sightings and that sort of thing.
But every lead comes to nothing. The Moxleys take matters into their own hands.
We called hospitals. We called nursing homes. We walked the woods. I think we have searched the whole county, but we couldn't find nothing. We didn't know what was going on.
It seemed like I wanted to just turn everything upside down just to find her, but you couldn't. You just kept running into dead ends.
Dawn and Billy even appear on television, tearfully asking viewers for any news of Miss Louise.
Please come home or call.
Yeah. Right there.
A few days after Miss Louise disappears, her brother Dale Moxley stumbles on a magazine story about Deborah Hineker, a Maryland psychic. She has been praised for locating Vader, a search and rescue dog gone missing from the Canine Police Unit in Montgomery County. Dale calls the family immediately.
And I just said, maybe this is how we could, get some help here.
Deborah Hineker, a former computer programmer, is new to the world of psychic investigation.
I can focus on a subject or something that belongs to the victim. That's when I start to get the pictures, or sometimes I will hear sounds. I will allow myself to be the victim so that I can get a better picture of exactly what happened to them in their final moments.
The psychic agrees to come to Berlin, but first, she asks the family to send her a photograph of Miss Louise, along with some of her personal items.
I started to tune in, and the numbers 335 came to me. I saw a white horse. It also came to me that Miss Louise was getting ready to go on some sort of vacation. I clearly saw a building, and I made the angle of the metal roof.
3 days later, when the Moxleys pick up the psychic at the airport, they're not prepared for what she asks them.
I read the numbers and I said, do these numbers mean anything to anyone?
She said 335. My brother-in-law said that's Don's and Billy's address.
When Mildred Miss Louise Williams disappears from her home in Berlin, Maryland, the police suspect she's gone on a bender. But a psychic sees a set of numbers, and that arouses suspicion.
She said 335. That's Don's and Billy's address.
Could Miss Louise's daughter and son-in-law have something to do with her disappearance?
They had got in a fuss 2 weeks before because Louise had told him that she had changed her will.
Dawn and Billy had recently stopped Miss Louise from seeing her grandchild. In retaliation, Miss Louise threatened to disinherit them.
After my sister disappeared, Billy Warren would never look me in the eye. Deep in your heart, you have a funny feeling.
With Dawn and Billy present, the Moxleys say nothing. But what about her other visions? The vacation.
We planned a family reunion in North Carolina for a week. Every one of the Moxleys were going to meet. We were all going to, go on vacation.
But the white horse and the metal roof are a mystery. The Moxley siblings drive the medium to Billy and Dawn's farm, the very address she saw in her vision.
We went to Dawn and Billy's house, and there was this white horse in the fence right alongside the road near their house. It was spooky.
Still unaware of the siblings' own suspicions, the psychic becomes uneasy as she nears the house. She takes Nettie Moxley aside.
When I had her a bit to herself, I basically said, I'm afraid of Billy, so don't leave me alone with him. And she agreed. I think she had no intention of leaving me alone with him.
They enter the house and go into the kitchen.
When Deborah got to the kitchen, she got a terrible headache. She felt a terrible pain.
I said, it feels like something just hit me in the head.
I think she creeped Billy out. She worried him a lot.
I started feeling as if Billy and Dawn didn't want me in their house. They were being very fidgety, and they were trying to hurry me out. So we go outside, and there's this dirt path. And I said, I want to walk down this little dirt road. The same radar that knew that Vader was in the woods, it was that sort of radar. It just pulls me. And Billy did not want me to go down that road. He said, "You don't want to go down there. That place is full of snakes." So that was enough to deter me from going back there.
The psychic's intuition matches the siblings' growing suspicions. They believe Billy and Dawn are hiding something. But what? Deborah Hineker returns to Catonsville, Maryland, but she's not finished with Miss Louise yet. Over the next few weeks, she continues to experience strange, extrasensory flashes.
I was hearing the buzzsaw, and I felt as if I had been pushed into almost quicksand, like I was being pulled down and the mud was just coming into my mouth, coming into my face, just being covered with mud, and that I was going to drown there. It was very frightening.
A buzzsaw, drowning in mud. Is Deborah Hineker looking for a missing person or a dead body? Her psychic intuition tells her Miss Louise may have been murdered. She makes a difficult phone call to Nettie Moxley.
I said, "I don't want to start trouble in the family," but I said, I felt that perhaps Dawn's husband, Billy, had killed Miss Louise and buried her either in or next to the pond behind their house. Her response was that they believed that also, but they needed me to help them prove it.
But proving it is easier said than done. Billy is an upright, church-going member of the community, not your typical murder suspect.
Mr. Warren had a stable and positive life. He had a nice job, a home, a family.
The Moxley siblings pass along the psychic's unnerving visions to the police, but they fall upon deaf ears. They still believe the most likely scenario is that Miss Louise has run off with a drinking buddy.
I've never believed in psychics. I've never believed in the supernatural. I've only ever believed the living are the people that can hurt you, not the dead. People that say they can tell you things that have happened or are going to happen, I just never had much faith in that.
As the weeks pass, the psychic and the Moxleys increasingly think Miss Louise is dead, and Billy is the killer. But without a body or hard evidence, they can't persuade the police to ramp up the investigation.
You can't arrest someone on a whim or what you think happened. You have to be able to prove what you're accusing someone of. If that's the case, as I felt at the time, but couldn't prove anything more, I couldn't in good conscience do anything different than what I was doing. I didn't have enough evidence.
The police won't forge ahead on the word of a psychic, but Miss Louise's family can, and does.
She just made our search even stronger. She made our will stronger. And it just gave us extra strength as a family to go search even harder.
3 months after she vanished, the case is given new life. Sergeant Bill Gordy is transferred to the Berlin Police Department from nearby Wicomico County.
My gut told me that there were elements of the investigation that needed to be refocused, and that maybe she was not missing but had become the victim of foul play.
In Berlin, Maryland, local chicken farmer Mildred Miss Louise Williams is missing. Her siblings and a psychic suspect her daughter and son-in-law. With a new detective on the case, their suspicions are suddenly taken seriously.
We met with the Moxleys and tried to work out something with them that would be a cooperative type effort in the investigation.
Miss Louise's sister, Nettie Moxley, calls Deborah Hineker with the news. And detectives drop their earlier skepticism and begin consulting with the psychic regularly by phone.
I view a psychic as much the same as an investigative aid as, say, a polygraph. It can many times put pressure on a person, and since we didn't have a lot of active leads to pursue, it was believed that this might well present one of those situations.
There wasn't a day that went by that I didn't think of Billy and that case, and basically how I was going to get him.
Not only do the psychic and the Moxleys have their sights set on the grieving daughter and son-in-law, now the police start watching Dawn and Billy more carefully.
We did try to ratchet up the attention on him to let him know that we were more closely scrutinizing their current and past statements and behavior.
Billy Warren has been acting strangely, nervous, edgy, short-tempered.
He was just not a cool, calm, collected person.
Finally, the police ask Billy and Dawn to take a polygraph. They agree, and on December 12, 1991, the tests are scheduled.
Billy said Dawn's not going to take the polygraph, and then after just a brief conversation, himself elected not to. He developed a difficulty speaking. He was almost incoherent. He was obviously very frightened, very upset, very unnerved by the entire experience. It was obvious that there was more on his mind than just the refusal of a polygraph test.
I think he knew the door was coming shut on him. The pieces were there. It was only a matter of time.
For the police, refusing to take a polygraph is a red flag. But it's still not enough to make a move.
We had a lot of conjecture. We had a lot of, this doesn't add up, this doesn't look right, but physical evidence to tie him to a crime, zero.
Maybe that physical evidence can be found where the psychic had been telling them all along.
I told the police that I felt that she was in mucky soil, and Billy and Dawn had that pond right back there, and I had been drawn there originally, so I wanted them to go there.
But finally, I asked the investigators that were currently working on the case to go out to Mr. Warren's house.
There, two of the investigators head towards the pond, while Trooper Frick waits outside. Suddenly, the door opens and Billy calls out to him. Billy has something to say.
He just literally fell to pieces in front of me and started confessing.
5 months after she vanished, the terrible mystery of what happened to the chicken farmer is solved. Billy says on July 29th, Miss Louise came over to visit. He was alone. They argued over Dawn's inheritance. Miss Louise threatened to disinherit Dawn once again.
He became enraged. There was a claw hammer there. He had been doing some home repairs. He picked up the hammer and swung it and struck her in the head.
He says she fell, and he tried to get her off the carpet pretty quick. He didn't want her to mess the carpet up.
He buried Miss Louise in the mud next to the pond behind his house, washed her truck, and drove it to the grocery store parking lot.
It was meant to be found as though she was there and left it, like meeting someone.
Later, when the psychic nearly stumbled on Miss Louise's burial spot, Billy panicked, dug his mother-in-law up, dismembered her with a buzzsaw, and reburied her under the floorboards of his woodshed. A woodshed with a slanted metal roof. Billy goes on to say that his wife had no knowledge of the crime. The murder weapon and the body are later recovered, as is evidence of blood spatter in the couple's home, corroborating the confession and the psychic's vision.
Miss Louise evidently had been bludgeoned in their kitchen, and when they pulled up the rug, they found her blood under the rug exactly where I was standing when I said that I felt that I had been hit in the head.
Billy Warren is sentenced to 20 years in prison for the murder of Mildred Louise Williams. Then, Billy drops a bombshell. He reveals his wife Dawn helped him to cover up the murder. She's charged as an accessory and sentenced to 5 years. In a cruel twist of fate, Dawn receives her mother's inheritance on her release.
She knowed what happened from day one, you know, from the first minute.
You gotta realize you're being torn apart from love and hate. You love someone and they've done something to hurt one of your family members. Now there's hate over here pulling that apart.
It's your mother. I mean, she gave you life. And you can cut her up and put her in the woods and walk out that door and go to church every Sunday morning looking over in those woods and knowing your mother's over there buried.
The police credit Deborah Hineker with pushing Billy over the edge and into the arms of the law.
I personally believe she played a pivotal role. I would like to think we could have done it without her. However, that's not the case. Her predictions were the key to causing him to confess.
When he confessed, he said that he wasn't afraid of all the Moxleys. He wasn't afraid of the police. He was afraid of me because he knew I was going to get him.
To put it bluntly, I think she's the reason the case was solved. So if someone asked me today what I think of psychics, I'd have to say that I have changed my views completely and I'd listen to a psychic.
Deborah Hineker also turned the Moxleys into believers.
I thought she was super. As far as I'm concerned, she can walk on water now. It's like she turned the lights on to everything. We were all in the dark till she came along.
I've never believed in psychics. I don't know much about them, but I know that she was right on and she helped us.
I actually felt that justice was going to be served for Miss Louise. I felt that Miss Louise deserved to have that confession.
The Moxleys have never gotten over it.
She was a good friend. If you needed her, she was there. She should have had a peaceful death. I just miss her.